It all began with the wrong cop on the wrong day, a protein bar, and no one anticipated anything except a peaceful afternoon in the well-lit aisles of a suburban supermarket. However, in full costume, Officer Troy Kincaid pushed open the glass doors, off-duty, without oversight, and with a positive attitude. He wasn't there to eat and milk. Like a predator searching for a cause, his gaze swept over the rows. Then he observed him. A black man reading the label on a bottle of water, by himself, serene, just standing, no groceries, no cart. Kincaid had intuition that had nothing to do with law or peril. They have to do with control. With one hand on his belt as he walked up, he was already creating a scene in his mind as the other twitched close to his radio. One in which he had the opportunity to correct someone. He sighed, "Let's see some ID." No greeting, no background, just mistrust tinged with strength. Slowly the man blinked. "To purchase water?" he inquired. Kincaid squinted eight eyes. "You're putting things off." "Really, what are you doing here?" In their immediate vicinity, individuals pretending not to look, they began. Telephones dipped, sliding glances. Racial shouting isn't always the first step in profiling. Frequently, it starts with a query that only a select few ever understand. Inquired. The hoodie-wearing man did not recoil. He didn't speak louder. Are you detaining me or just harassing me in public?" Kincaid questioned plainly. Moved in closer. He remarked mockingly, "Too close." "Step outside, sir." Civility. The kind that means force is 5 seconds away. "We'll sort this out." It changed at that point. There was something deadly about the man's sigh. Calm, collected, and utterly sure. "You're interfering with a federal investigation," he stated. Eyes met the officer's. Kincaid chuckled. "You, a federal agent?" He was unaware. The actual badge was hidden from him. The cameras had escaped his notice. He hadn't realized he had. Just stepped into a trap. However, what followed would be captured, examined, and replicated through millions of screens. Because there were more than one black customer and one cop who is overly enthusiastic. It dealt with exposure, authority, and the consequences of the law. Law enforcement overlooks the fact that justice is not uniformed. It has a purpose, and that mission today was to observe everything while strolling along the frozen food. Everything might change with only one mistake. Officer Kincaid's career started to fall apart at this point, and America began to observe. Kincaid, the officer, did not back down. He doubled down. Kincaid's lips curved as soon as the man said federal investigation, but not with fear, but haughtiness. "Yeah, I've heard that one before," he replied, hovering close to his handcuffs like a gambler preparing to play his favorite card. He said, "I'll guess." "Did you also forget your badge?" The man remained silent. He just continued to read the label of the water bottle as if nothing had happened. More than anything else, that enraged Kincaid, the absence of fear and refusal to act out the role. Kincaid stepped forward, violating someone's personal space with the ease of someone who has done it too often and has never faced consequences, while his voice remained calm. There was a crack when I urged, "Step outside now." Beneath the surface, similar to a fissure developing beneath glass, a few people were beginning to pay attention. A female in the following her cart slowed down the aisle. A young man by the snack bar stopped, his phone slightly cocked and his hand hovering over a bag of chips. Approaching the action. Kincaid took note. He was indifferent. "You can simplify this or worsen it," he said. "You decide that." The man said, "I'm not the one escalating. And I'd advise you to move your hand away from your cuffs if you don't want to commit a crime." He said without raising his head. The words "federal offense on camera" reverberated. Kincaid was too deep, and his eyes temporarily shifted to his body cam while he continued to roll. Now, Kincaid didn't back down, which would have meant acknowledging his mistake, not in public. "In uniform, okay, that's it," he yelled. "Hands where I can see them." He took hold of the man's wrist and whirled him in the direction of the refrigerated area, twisting one arm. Behind his back. The man's voice was calm, but he didn't resist yet. "Without a warrant or probable cause, you just touched a federal agent." This whole incident is now included in and congratulations on your obstruction case. Kincaid ignored him and withdrew. The man was forced onto a bench close to the front of the store, using zip ties rather than handcuffs. You think mentioning FBI makes you untouchable? You people think that works? He grumbled Dot as soon as he stated, you folks? The store fell silent like wildfire. It wasn't loud, not right away. Only the intense group tension that arises when everyone is aware for the first time. The man looked up, and something irrevocable had just happened. He spoke. Without shouting or arguing, his eyes meeting with Concess's. You should have walked away. A middle-aged manager said gently. Officer, I know this customer, she continued, obviously shaken, and he's here a lot. Nothing is wrong. Do you want to face charges of tampering with a police investigation? I wonder? Kincaid snarled, and she froze, remained silent, and retreated from the scenario. The audience increased. Some people now openly recorded, while others murmured. One teenager, is he really FBI? The girl whispered to her mother. I'm not sure, sweetie, Lincine, a big man in the corner, said, but that cop's going to find out. The hard way. A woman by the bakery area tapped something into her smartwatch. While a man in a gray hoodie repositioned his phone, they weren't shoppers, they weren't frequent customers, and they weren't disinterested. Kincaid was encircled, but he didn't see it. The man wearing zip ties took a big breath. Attentive, not irate or scared, because everything that Kincaid had just done, the power, the profanity, and the aggression was precisely what he needed, the last component in a procedure that took months. And now the Trapfa police still believed he had the advantage, even though it had closed flawlessly. Kincaid paced in front of him like a boxing champion, saying, You know what I think? You probably printed that fake badge online. I purchased it from a website for aspiring individuals. I see guys just like you all the time. You don't? The man murmured, his eyes fixed on mine. The reports that shut down your department are written by folks like me who don't make the news. Kincaid paused for the first time. There was a flicker and a change in the atmosphere. Who that are you in hell? The man leaned forward a little as he questioned. Special Agent Marcus, he paused and said, Hale, FBI, Financial Crimes and Civil Rights Division. And you simply got in. The way of both. Kincaid's expression remained unchanged, but the enthusiast murmured him. The force of that badge, the agent's voice, it hung in the air like the second before thunder, since everything was still being recorded. Nice story, with a softer voice now, Kincaid said, looking at his recently arrived partner. Take him through the system. Let's confirm the true identity of this joker. The second officer, younger, more uneasy, nodded and began verifying the name Marcus had provided. In the meantime, the manager made another attempt, more firmly this time. Officer, please. I'm not sure what's occurring here, but this client has never caused issues. If it helps, I can look through his receipts, but Marcus, he was concentrating on the new officer's radio, not listening to her. Static, a click, a clipped voice, then returned. Special Agent Marcus, confirming ID. Welcome to the Financial Crimes Task Force. An active FBI assignment. Kincaid's shoulders dropped half an inch, his jaw tightened, and he froze. Regarded Marcus as though he had never seen him before, but pride overcame him after the moment. This isn't your store, he continued, his voice no longer piercing. That doesn't explain what you're doing in my store. You have now tainted a federal crime scene, Marcus retorted. Well done. Somewhere the temperature dropped, a phone dinged near the deli counter, and already viral video from the supermarket was making the rounds on the internet. Kincaid was shown pulling Marcus's arm in the thumbnail with the description, Cop detains innocent black customer. Receives a startling answer. Due to its hunger, the algorithm had discovered its next meal. A gorgeous black SUV drove up outside. Sand sirens. A plainclothes woman emerged and showed a badge to the officer at the entrance and entered deliberately. Special Agent Lydia Chun was her name. She didn't grin. She didn't link. She approached Marcus directly, gave him a single nod, and then turned to Kincaid. That's it, she said. Your name, badge number, and body cam footage are urgently needed. Pardon me, Kincaid stumbled, abruptly losing his height. Regarding whose power? Lydia spoke in a soothing yet deadly tone. Department of Justice, mine. You recently jeopardized a coordinated government hunt for an interstate money laundering conspiracy, and in the process breached a minimum of 3 civil rights laws. Now, bodycam. His companion passed the gadget to him. Kincaid remained still. Marcus rose. Flexing his wrists, where the zip ties had sunk into his flesh, slowly. We didn't want this to go public, he stated with a hint of disappointment. We were monitoring illegal EBT transactions made with drug money. 2 more were all we needed, days of clear video, but because of you, the suspects were alarmed. Wait, EBT? Drug money? Inquired the junior officer. Marcus gave a nod. Each week, using stolen benefit cards, people enter, purchase food, dump the goods, wash the money, and relocate them. We tracked more than $400,000 through this site in 3 months, spanning state lines. Why didn't you inform the local Marcus turned? PD? Kincaid demanded, because we had grounds to suppose someone was giving them a hint in your department, and you just confirmed that notion by acting exactly as we had anticipated. The whole storefront had gone quiet, and Kincaid retreated a step, but there was nowhere else to go. Cameras, clients, staff, onlookers, and witnesses. The irony is, you weren't the target, Marcus whispered softly as he passed him and glanced over his shoulder after saying, You volunteered. He left the parking lot as 2 additional federal cars pulled up. The lights behind him flashed, yet there were no sirens. A storm had begun and Kincaid didn't have an umbrella. As soon as Agent Marcus Hale entered the brightness, everything was different, and the parking lot was no longer a sea offers. It served as a staging area, and in a matter of minutes, unmarked government cars pulled in from all sides, with agents in civilian clothes and dark SUVs with government license plates encircling the area, the anger that had been simmering inside. The grocery store suddenly poured out into the street as it spread out, although this wasn't trade. This was a combination of control, retaliation, and precision wrapped in law enforcement. Within the shop, Officer Kincaid stood motionless, the low murmur drowned out by the thudding of his pulse in his ears. All he could hear was the buzzing of the radio calls, the manager's anxious conversation, and the noise of the crowd. The phrase, "You weren't the target," echoed. You offered to help. Special Agent Lydia Chun didn't waste time. Defect. She obtained Kincaid's badge number and requested that his body camera film be digitally uploaded to the DOJ's. Internal Kincaid attempted to counter that and informed the local precinct commander to get ready for an internal affairs encounter. You folks believe you can just walk in? But the only thing that emerged was feeble deflection. Lydia abruptly interrupted him here, and yes, that's just what we're allowed to do under cooperative federal civil operations, particularly when local law enforcement officials interfere with federal investigations and racial profiling. The phrase, racial profiling, struck deeply. Alone has cultural, political, and legal clout. It's not merely a keyword, it's a trigger, and it was clearly visible on all of the cameras in that business. Marcus, meantime, was standing next to an unremarkable van that was now serving as a mobile command center, with operatives inside. Watched live security footage from the store's ceiling cameras and synchronized them with the public's popular mobile device. Video already making the rounds on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. A thumbnail with more than 400,000 views revealed. Others yelled, "He's FBI!" Kincaid was holding Marcus. The caption read, "Bodycam footage shows Cup government agent in custody." An investigation breaks out, but the criminal case was the bigger storm, not the internet fervor. Building in real time. Marcus watched the video on a tablet that was secured, as the woman with the EBT card was scanning timestamps already abandoned. Her cart as soon as the altercation started. Since the sale was not finished, the laundered money would disappear into the network once more. Kincaid's brief display of ego wars, the suspects now realized they had blown a 3-month undercover sting. Were pleasant. We had them, Marcus muttered softly to Lydia. We could have them in 2 more days. Proceeded to the holding account after the wire transfer. She answered, "We'll get them." We deal with this first, though, she nodded as she turned to face another agent. Make it public. We are unable to let the story is shaped by the narrative. Then a new operation started. Control over the media, the Department of Justice, confirmed an active federal investigation in a public announcement within 45 minutes. Incompetence by the local police had jeopardized the probe. Terms like potential civil rights were used with caution, violations, officer accountability, and obstructing a federal probe. Sanitized body cam footage and official confirmation of Agent Hale's identification were included in the press release. Like vultures, news outlets flocked. Returning to the supermarket Kincaid sat last, the command staff showed up. James Fuller, the gay-haired, measured captain, weary, he entered and glanced at the scene. Then he entered directly into the parking lot in Marcus' direction. He started. Agent Hale, taking off his sunglasses. I need to talk to you, Marcus nodded, composed yet straightforward. All right, Captain. On behalf of my department, I must apologize. What transpired inside? That isn't how we do things. Marcus tilted. Is that correct? Kincaid has always been a bit, Marcus remarked icily. You did. Aggressive, but I didn't know it went this far. You simply didn't think anyone would notice. Captain Fuller's mouth formed a line. He was aware that there was no point in arguing about it. Not with federal reporters are already circling like sharks, and agents are keeping an eye on everything. And then the last nail, a tablet in hand, one of Lydia's agents came over. After conducting a pattern analysis of Kincaid's previous stops, he revealed that he had stopped and interrogated black men in the zip code 5 times more frequently than any other police. And in 90% of those stops, no citation, no arrest, Marcus didn't bat an eye. It was merely intimidation. Get me the body cam footage. I want names, timestamps, and transcripts. I'm reopening every event. Yes, sir. From a basic grocery shop sting to the operation has developed into a comprehensive civil rights inquiry. Kincaid didn't realize he was starting a chain reaction, spanning state and federal lines when he grabbed that man's arm. However, the story was now about systemic abuse rather than an illegal detention. And it was too late. Illegal policing and the misuse of power in the name of public safety. Marcus Hale, however, he was the face of federal justice and was undercover for a longer period of time. By early, the grocery store's front had been converted into a staging area by the evening, with local press vans parked next to federal SUVs, journalists, their satellite dishes spreading up toward the sky like cloths crowded the sidewalk in search of sound bites. But a DOJ representative only gave them one line. The department is currently examining evidence of obstruction of a federal investigation and civil rights abuses. The people didn't require any more explanation at this time. The clips were sufficient to start firestorms on all social media platforms. Hashtags such as #FBIVs police for hours. The hashtags #EdWrongShopper and #BodyCamJustice were popular. Marcus Hale gazed at the steady stream of audio, witness testimony, and video footage within the mobile command post. Logs arriving from civilian phones. He appeared worn out rather than proud. As he scrolled through CCTV footage of the EBT fraud suspects escaping, he said, 3 months of preparation. As Kincaid held him, he made a side exit, and the entire situation was ruined by one man's ego. With a sad nod, Lydia Chun tapped on a folder. But he gave us something larger. Kincaid, a file containing previous grievances that were all internally rejected under federal review, reopened. He's the weak point. And when we pluck that thread, this entire department might fall apart. Kincaid was escorted to the downtown precinct, enters a side office without a gun, badge, or command. Sitting by himself, his expression hollow, he tried to make sense of what had just transpired. His phone rang and lit up with texts from coworkers, most of them silent, some worried. Stuck out. The DOJ is here. They claim you assaulted an agent on tape. Reality set in at that point. His typical strategies, including threats, bluster, denial, wouldn't work right now, not with civilian records, body cam footage, and live not when his activities were being evaluated, not only by local brass, but surveillance. All pointed to the same conclusion. Not when the man he attempted to handcuff was a senior agent with the full support of the United States, according to federal authorities. Government. Back at the store, one of the onlookers, Renita Wills, came up to Marcus as she was still trembling from what she had witnessed as she stood by the entrance. She whispered quietly, I wanted to thank you. My nephew had a run-in with last year's cop. Just scared him half to death, no charges. We attempted to voice our displeasure. Nothing took place. With calm gaze, Marcus turned to face her. I have faith in yourself. And something will this time, I swear, I am something. The justice's wheels were already churning. Within 24 hours, a federal investigation was started. Hours armed with subpoenas. A DOJ Civil Rights Squad arrived in town and case files from the past. 3 nearby cities had their internal affairs officers removed in order to prevent conflict of interest. Additionally, Agent Hale was granted complete authority to help with establishing a practice case pattern, an examination to see whether the department, rather than just the officer, had encouraged an atmosphere of abuse, wrongful detention, and racial profiling of power. Kincaid's personnel file was unlocked in a matter of days, exposing a decade-long trail of grievances, many of which were rejected without a proper examination. The recently revealed probe-internal documents indicating that subordinate officers were encouraged to keep an eye on wary consumers, frequently targeting minorities with coded language. The DOJ would eventually refer to the documents as devastating. Proof of a culture of condoned misbehavior. However, 3 days later, probably the most widely shared moment was when body cam footage was formally published. Only the sensitive investigation was removed from the clip, facts, which revealed Kincaid addressing Marcus, intensifying the conflict, and finally zip-tying a man who maintained his composure the entire time. In the last moment, Marcus gives his completed designation as a federal agent and alerting the public that the officer had recently jeopardized a federal case and caused a civil loss review of rights. Those words became legendary at that very instant. Clips were shared with overlays of music. Bold white text was added by TikTok edits. He tampered with the incorrect one. However, there was a more profound change behind the online commotion. Shattered community trust, yes, but also starting to awaken again? There were onlookers, and this time justice has receipts. 10 days later, Marcus was back in the field, but this time he wasn't chasing small cash laundering, but to assist in breaking down the framework that permitted persons like Kincaid to function for years without oversight. What started as an incident involving stolen EBT cards escalated into something far larger. A federal confrontation encased in the silent determination of a man who never yelled, never lost his anger, and never forgot task. Additionally, Kincaid kept his badge that day. Slowly he lost it, motion under the pressure of each frame, each quotation, and each resulting consequence for. Because cameras don't blink in our America, and even the loudest badge can't hide the truth when it's captured on video, justice cannot be silenced. Officer Troy Kincaid's capture was not the twist. The actual twist was what transpired after the investigation revealed something much more hazardous compared to one rogue police officer. A straightforward forensic audit was the first step. The DOJ's Civil Rights Unit started comparing internal dispatch logs, traffic stop records, and Kincaid's body cam footage. What they discovered was more than just unsettling. It was a systematic issue. More than 80% of Black or Latino guys were involved in his stops throughout the previous 2 years. Most of them only asked questions. They were never charged or cited. Just let go. However, it was more than just racial profiling. The actual shock arrived when a silent run of missing case fund irregularities was linked by financial investigators to those stops. Civil forfeiture money material was taken, but it was never properly added to the evidence. Although the files contained names and serial numbers, the funds were gone. More than $87,000 is missing. At that point, the emphasis moved from the actions of a single officer to something far worse. A network. Now officially reassigned to head the DOJ task team in the area, Agent Marcus Hale was given a sealed file from a whistleblower within the division. The missing property room logs label was applied. Activities that was reported. Screenshots from surveillance, dated logs that had been altered hours after arrests, and incident reports with legally illogical suppressed fields. Kincaid's name was mentioned in a number of them. Together with another cop, Sergeant Alan Brody, a supervisor who has over 18 years on the force. Brody's record was impeccable, his performance evaluations were excellent, and a firm hold on the chain of custody protocol for evidence. However, there was a problem. Actually, this was all wrong. Marcus called a meeting around midnight with a few group of federal agents. Faraday bags were used to hold the phones. Wi-Fi was turned off. Away, only printed papers. Abuse of power was no longer the only issue here. This was about a law enforcement agency's orchestrated corruption. Furthermore, the racial profiling was not arbitrary, it was tactical. Marcus clarified that they targeted those who were unlikely to resist. Low income, no before, there were no attorneys, no one they knew would complain, and no one they believed would be important. And it was successful. Years passed before the wrong man entered a supermarket, and then a body cam caught more than a single instant. It caught a state of mind. However, the federal government would not hold a press conference or door-to-door protest. Everything had to be airtight. Marcus formed a multi-agency task force. Criminal Division of the IRS intervened to track down the lost forfeited funds. The Inspector General's office intervened to oversee procedural wingdong. Civil rights lawyers started gathering testimonies from people who had been pulled over, searched, and fired without explanation. Then the last blow was delivered. A subpoena into the Sergeant Brody's private banking transactions showed several cash deposits that were barely above the reporting level. Here, $9,700. Elsewhere, $8,500. All of them were placed in rural credit unions within a few hours after. He oversaw property confiscation. The funds hadn't simply disappeared. Badge access had been used to launder it. As the federal heat became more intense, local news outlets noticed. Morning broadcasts were filled with screaming headlines. DOJ investigation finds evidence stealing and breaches of civil rights in the police force. Community gatherings evolved into permanent forums that are room-only. Residents were furious and sought explanations. Activists shared Troy Kincaid and Marcus Hale, the composed federal agent and the combative street cop, are shown side by side as symbols of two Americas. One that uses the law as a weapon and one that enforces justice. Marcus did not, however, grandstand. He worked lawfully, silently, and brutally. Additionally, when at 6:43 a.m., he was physically present at the precinct doors when the federal warrant arrived, as Brody wassled out in handcuffs. Just the sound of concrete, without any yelling or spectacle. Beneath bulky boots and Marcus's one straightforward statement, the termination of the chain of custody today. 3 more policemen was suspended in a matter of hours. A fourth turned state's observer. Kincaid had already lost his badge when he was charged with civil rights violations and federal obstruction. Infractions that could result in punishment under the provision on color of law misuse. In an internal statement, the FBI emphasized that no officer, regardless of career or title, was superior to responsibility. Previously used to defend the use of force, body cam footage was now being used to remove atavism. Marcus understood, however, that justice was more than just making arrests. It has to do with reform. Thus, he continued, he assisted the DOJ and the city in reaching a memorandum of understanding. A deal that would overhaul the police force from the ground up. Modules for bias policing training, community supervision, and constitutional rights become required. A fresh civilian review panel was established. Set up with subpoena authority. Power in the country for the first time in decades. That community underwent a moral and legal transformation. A week following the indictment, Marcus received an invitation to participate in a community forum. He did not appear to be a man who had gone viral as he stood behind the podium. As a citizen who had witnessed too much and made the decision to take action, not as a federal badge, according to him, some individuals believe that justice entails locking up bad cops. However, the truth of the goal of justice is to ensure that your brother, son, or anybody else who enters abusing us and is arbitrarily treated like a suspect. There was silence in the room, not because of terror or putrescence, as each individual in that space had experienced it, either directly or indirectly a loved one. The pain of feeling as though you don't belong. The pain of knowing that your voice would be questioned and your quiet would be used as a weapon. However, they notice something now distinct. They seen the appearance of justice when it arrives early, remains late, and retains invoices. The following week, the grocery store reopened under new management. Camera stayed, but trust did too. And Marcus Hale didn't express gratitude. He left for the cheers. After logging the final piece of evidence and packing up his paperwork, he climbed into his car. There were other departments, other towns, and other fissures developing underneath the surface. And if nobody else was listening, Hewelled. Because occasionally the loudest man in the room is also the quietest. Mission. Additionally, justice wears a badge on his back when he is dressed simply. Change starts when they reach their pocket and recall every name they attempted to forget. The plot changes at that point. At that point, nobody can claim they were unaware of it. Once more, the supermarket shop was silent. No cameras, none was, just the shuffling of carts on spotless floors and the gentle hum of refrigerators. It has been a week after the air felt breathable at last after the FBI takedown. The old fear that grew more intense, the scar would not go away, but the sore throats and hunched backs had begun to go. Not only for the residents, but also for the system that permitted it to fester in the open, standing in aisle 3 with the identical bottle of water he was never able to purchase. Was Agent Marcus Hale? Nobody came up to him. Right now. He was no longer a mystery. He represented responsibility and silence, strength of what occurs when justice enters without knocking. As he went by, the clerk nodded respectfully. A woman drew her son closer and said something in a whisper that made the boy's eyes enlarge as if he were witnessing a superhero dressed in everyday attire. The town had transformed outside. Although it was not flawless, it had broken open, and occasionally it is all that is required for light to enter. A new resolution was enacted by the city council mandating that all police receive ongoing civil rights certification and prejudice training. A community law was started by a nearby college clinic that provides pro bono legal assistance to people who have been wrongfully stopped or detained. Additionally, a young man who once Kincaid smashed him against a wall for loitering, and he now volunteers at the center to assist others in filing complaints and seek legal support for accountability. Marcus did not do it to gain attention. Had completed it since it was necessary, due to the fact that one altercation in a supermarket had revealed something much older, something much deeper, and that curtain now disappeared. At the community forum, he had stated that justice is not about retaliation. It concerns avoidance. The goal is to create a society in which those sworn to defend people are not feared. He would in the days following the tragedy. Hundreds of messages were received. Some from people you don't know, some from victims in the past, some he was thanked by some cops from other states for doing what they were unable to. One message remained with him. Most, 2 years before. A 17-year-old girl's brother had been unlawfully searched. What she said was easy. He didn't think anyone gave a damn. He does now after watching your video. That one was saved by Marcus. His activities caused a stir in Washington. The Hale incident was notably included in new racial profiling guidelines, released by the Office of Civil Rights. A pivotal moment. Departments across examined their data on stops and searches. Additionally, in over a dozen cities, officers who had gotten lost for too long, like Kincaid, became the subject of inquiries. However, for Marcus, it had nothing to do with headlines or figures. It was about the child who noticed something strange when he was watching him at the supermarket. Concerning the woman whose nephew was able to walk a bit taller today, about the silent triumph of being acknowledged as more than a danger. Quietly, he left town. Just a rented car, no journalist, no ceremonial on the passenger seat, a closed case file. He was needed in another city. An additional the system awaited a challenge. However, prior to leaving, he stopped at a outside the supermarket shop. There is a red signal. He was still zip-tied to the same bench, which was now quiet and vacant. Additionally, a new sign that had never been there before had been installed by the store above it. It said, "Everyone belongs here." He gave a small smile and continued driving, for justice doesn't have to yell. It doesn't require a camera or a badge flashing in the sunlight to demonstrate its presence. Sometimes. The most effective kind of justice is the one that appears as a regular guy purchasing a bottle of water and departing from a world that has changed.